Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Macs' new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.
Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Macs Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the Sheila Macs Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today we have Reginald Ryder. Reginald is the founder of Thriving Life Coaching, LLC, and has been coaching college and high school students, prepping them for their academic journey since 2018. Ryder has worked with thousands of students over his 30 years in higher education and K-12 settings. Thriving Life Coaching motto is every student needs a little TLC. Reginald holds a Bachelor of Science degree in political science from Ball State University and a Master of Education in College Student Personnel Administration from James Madison University. Reginald has worked in admissions, multicultural student services, and academic advising at Ball State University, Butler University, Allegheny College, and Cornell University. Reginald made the transition in 2013 to the education technology sector as a senior student success specialist working in partnership with USC, the Rossier School of Education's Organization Change and Leadership Doctorate program, and he is the adjunct professor at Northern Virginia Community College. And in 2019, Reginald wrote the book, Passing the Baton, a guide and memoir to college success. Upon its release on Amazon, the book, written from the perspective of a first-generation student and now a seasoned retention specialist, was a top seller in 2 categories, adult and continuing education and study skills, within the first 2 weeks being released. Ryder is the father of 2 college-age students, Christina and Reginald II, and married to Kim Amaker Ryder. All right, welcome to the show, Reginald.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, and this show is based on my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this year, we have experienced just about every situation imaginable. So I always like to ask my guests about a time maybe in your personal life where you had a tough situation that you had to overcome and how you got back on track.
Wow. It actually, I would probably even say, I think I've had lots of situations that have come up, but I think I'd probably say college in general, just being a first generation student. My father was in the Air Force. And so, there's, the kind of acumen of knowing what's going on and what's happening in the world in general, that I had, good experience with. So I was born in South Dakota. I've lived in Georgia. I've lived in Oregon, lived in Indiana. So I've lived a lot of different places. And so transitioning has always been kind of a natural process. I think I moved 4 times by the time I was age 10.
Wow.
But for all that they, kind of imparted on me, and, discipline and, all the life lessons that I learned, no one could really tell me about the process of going to college. And so that part of the process for me was learning how to maneuver through that. And I was an average student. I didn't really, put too much effort into, work and the school and that kind of thing. And realized that when I got to school, how much of a deficit in some respects I was in. And so, I much like your title, at least in part, I had to pull myself up by the bootstraps, at least in some respects, to really kind of figure out what that was going to look like. So for me, it meant really, beginning to manage my time a little better, setting better priorities, sacrificing, going to class, working over the weekends and the like to, really, show myself what I was capable of doing. And I, wish in some respects I'd done that when I was, younger. It would have obviously, I think surely changed the trajectory of my life in some respects, but glad that I figured it out. And then from there, that challenge for me was, once I learned this, was then really trying to impart this to other people. And so that's really kind of been my life's work.
Yes. Wow. That's incredible. And it's difficult on kids when you have to move a lot, for sure. I grew up in a very interesting situation myself with abusive home life. My mother told me to leave home to be safe at 10. And from 10 to 13, I was homeless, going from friend's house to friend's house, sometimes sleeping on the street or spending the night out all night, sleeping on the benches at the Troubadour in Hollywood, all these crazy things. I was safer out there than at home. And then I found foster care and got back into school. And I thought it was such a gift because I loved to learn. And I actually graduated high school at 15, emancipated, and went out on my own and went to college early at 15. And there was a lot that I missed. I mean, I had to, I wanted to take computer programming because back then, this was DOS, back in the DOS days.
Right.
And I had to convince them that I didn't need the math tests and requirements in order to take the programming class, because I wanted to see if it was right for me before I had to learn 5 years of math that I missed. And I actually went to the library and I checked out math books and I taught myself algebra in order to get through the class. And
Sheila, I could have probably used it at one point in my life.
And I literally went, and I was the C student, yet I was the one that went and knocked on the door at JPL, and I got hired as a programmer, as an apprentice to begin with, and worked there until, it was kind of boring. It wasn't my strong suit. I would spend extra hours there because it was hard for me. Do you know what I mean? And that was the thing. And so I filled in the gaps over the years, and it took a long time. Later, I became a teacher and learned everything because I had such a hunger for learning, because I didn't get that opportunity early on in life, that I wanted to make up for it. And one of the things, so when you're listening in, that doesn't mean if you don't have it, if you don't have a skill, that doesn't mean you can't learn it. It doesn't matter how old you are or what stage of life you're in. It doesn't really matter. You start now and you start building, and it can really make all the difference. Even if you're a grandma or already, literally, even though you can still go back to college, and you can still learn. And what that's going to do, it changes the trajectory of your family's life. Like you're talking about, you were the first generation to go to college. Yeah. Now, how does that change your family's life?
Oh, very much so. So, in some respects, much to my glee, both my kids are in college. So my daughter's a junior right now. My son is a first year student. And believe it or not, and much to speak about even what you're talking about with regard to going back to school and finishing, my wife of 24 years is actually in the process of, she's taking an exam right now, as a matter of fact, and finishing her degree. So it's never too late. Never say never. And a saying I kind of live by, or at least I've heard, and I've kind of adopted it myself, is either it's one day or day one. You make the choice.
Now, here's the other thing. I was just watching, actually, the Red Table Talk, which is one of my favorite shows. And they talked to the lady, I can't even remember, a young girl that her family cheated. And they paid a lot of money a whole bunch of families were very wealthy, and they paid a bunch of money to get their kids into top universities, and they got caught, and the parents went to prison for a short time, really short time. But but and they got caught, and they said, well, they didn't even realize that was like a bad thing. And and how unfair that is to other people. And as a parent, I have 6 children. I adopted 3 are mine. They're all mine. And I think it's such a disservice to our children to give them something when they're not prepared like that. And that's when they don't care. That's when there's no gratitude. That's when they throw an education away. And it really the person it harms the most is the child that's supposed to be being helped or given this extra bonus or, this thing. It really hurts them so much.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I know that for every, book I turned and every page book I opened and every page I turned, that I really, really, appreciate, clearly my parents give me the opportunity and the access to a college education, and even now and trying to do the same thing for my kids. But I think sometimes for a lot of students going to school, aside from the it being given to them as almost as a right and a right or a privilege, depending on how what lens they're looking through. I think they're the part of that where even more confusion comes when they have this newfound freedom that they don't know what to do with.
Right.
Because you are, in effect, you are 18, you are an adult, or in the eyes of, the school and the eyes of the law in a lot of respects, you're considered an adult. And so sometimes, students, even with the best of pedigree and best of, family situations, go there and, really, kind of go buck wild and don't do what they need to do, and, don't go to class and don't do their work, and, end up with, less than stellar grades. And then sometimes, depending on, their own situation, that's, a scholarship that's now being, taken away, or at least in jeopardy, or, not able to return because you can't, or you make a, silly or dumb mistake with, abusing alcohol or drugs, or, plagiarizing, and you can't go back to school. And then that also, leaves a scar on your, on your record and on your life that sometimes doesn't allow you to recover from. So I think you're right, Sheila, all those things, but especially, the unmerited access sometimes does, in fact, kind of, spoil the experience and spoil the child in the process as well.
Yeah, there's something about also going for the career or the college education that you want, not the one your parents want for you.
Right. No, yeah.
It's often the case. And then there's so much resentment, and it's like you're wasting you're wasting your money. And,
right.
And the kids are wasting their time because they're not committed
right
to that pursuit of whatever that is. They're doing it to please the parents. And so it's something when they're finding their truth and their passion. I was committed to working in the computer programming industry because I already had a baby at 18. So I needed to support this baby. And that was my situation. And so I needed that, back then $20 an hour was like a lot with benefits. Yeah. And I needed the benefits.
Right.
And so that to me was why I did it. But really, I was drawn to do things that really aligned more with who I am. I ended up teaching the OSHA safety classes there. I ended up then transferring to the phone company back then, GTE, and doing programming there. Yes, and I worked there for a few years, and there I was leading groups and teaching, and that was more my thing, was working with people that way versus sitting at a desk. And it was, my body even hurt. I would get the carpal tunnel, the pains, this and that, because my body was like, this isn't the right fit for you.
Right.
There's so many signs. And, later I ended up with gift stores, and I slowly transitioned to selling things on swap meets to ending up having a gift store. And so you wonder, how does that relate to being on point? Well, I was leading all these kids. So I ended up with a 5,000 square foot gift store at 23. And I still did not have my college degree.
Oh.
Okay. I just had
it's possible. I mean, it's possible.
I had
still,
a certificate.
Yeah.
That's all I had. I had the certificate in programming.
But you had the drive, and that's probably.
I had a lot of drive. Yes.
And
I was doing the community college still only. And, like, just so I wouldn't have to pay back I took out loans. I didn't want to pay them back. So I would defer them, and I kept taking classes, but I wasn't sure what I wanted yet. So that was my discovery time. And I opened the store. I ended up running a program with the government, Job Training Partnership Act they had. And it was a training program for at-risk youth. A lot of the kids I worked with in the store were kids that were emancipating from foster care. So I was giving back to where I came from, really. And over 200 kids went through my program. I ended up having 5 stores, buying the buildings. And that was a big foundation to what I did, because although the stores were very successful, it wasn't selling stuff. It was serving the community, and it was helping people. It had a heart. And and it was a lot of leadership and a lot of working with people. And that's really, I was having fun. And then I realized at one point, gosh, everybody else has a degree. Everybody's so established in this community that I live in. I really need to have a degree now. and I adopted some more kids, and they're like, what's your degree? And I'm okay. And so I went back and started getting my degrees, and then I bought the buildings. So I got my real estate training so that I could buy and sell that way. All the other store owners wanted to learn. So then they became my clients. And I ended up closing the stores down and having just renting them out and going back and becoming a teacher. I was a Montessori teacher. I was a Waldorf teacher. I did, went to USC. I also got my degree there for real estate. And so I did both. And all my children, I adopted, like I said. So I had kids that were like, okay, they can't sit in the classroom. Okay, fine. So I wanted them to be in a educational program where they had a lot of different things they could do. So we ended up doing Montessori and Waldorf. And so it was really perfect for all the kids, and they got to go free because I worked there. And that was the main reason I was there, because I couldn't afford to pay for these private educations.
Sure.
And they needed that. They needed to catch up, and they gave them that opportunity with summer school and things, because I worked all year round with the kids. And so that there's a time where children can catch up. If your kids are behind and you work with them individualized, they can catch up, working on the strengths, and then also working on the areas where they have an educational gap. I think is so important, because there's a point I could see it where the kids would give up because it's too far ahead. You're in a math class, like you moved a lot as a kid, and all of a sudden they're speaking another language. The teacher, you don't even know what they're talking about. And so you zone out, and then you get into trouble, and you're joking with your friends to cover up for the fact you have no clue what they're talking about. And so if you can catch up, that now with computers, you don't even need anybody.
Yeah, true.
You can catch, there's so many different ways now to catch up on those areas. Go back to where you really, the highest level you can, and start a level below and catch up. Then the next thing you know, you're ahead the next year. And that's what I did with a lot of the kids that were coming into the schools, maybe from other schools. That were labeled and this and that, and they would go from needing special ed to not, just catching up.
I think a lot of times, you definitely made a lot of points. One of the first ones I want to really even kind of unpack a little bit is, I talk about this with presentations that I've done with different groups and organizations, but students in general is, the question becomes knowing your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you going to this particular school? Why are you interested in this particular major? why is this particular career or, vocation, something that you're, passionate about? Why are you passionate about it? And clearly all those things come through. Now, and I also ask them, make sure that your whys are your whys and not someone else's, i.e. your parents, much like you said. So it sounds like you almost already read my book or been to some of my seminars that I've been able to talk to and offer this information to people. But I think it's really important that be the foundation. And then from there, you can build it for yourself. One of the things that I think I want to highlight is there's a necessity, and I think part of what happens for a lot of students, and I think you tapped into it as well, is that it's not that they don't lack the capability of doing what's being asked of them in one respect or another. What sometimes it really has to do with their confidence. And if you can instill that confidence and that go get it and work really hard to get what it is that you want, I simply say a lot of times your confidence leads to your competence, which leads to your career, and being able to kind of pair what you've learned with a organization or a person that's going to be able to pour that much more into you. I actually kind of model it as an acronym, and that acronym is PAIR, and it's basically process and apply information for results. Bottom line. And I think the more that you can put yourself in a position to where you're able to do that, and clearly, Sheila, I read your story, but to hear your story is something totally different. I mean, my hat's off to you, because you clearly have done and accomplished a lot. And I think your story, surely amongst others, is one that I think people can definitely take something from. But I think the thing that you also talked about as well, aside from knowing your why and the kind of gaining your confidence, is the drive to do what you're interested in doing and passionate about. And when you have that passion, the drive comes easy. When it doesn't, then I think that's when you have to assess or reassess what you're doing ultimately, and then make the changes that you need to in order to move forward in the ways that you need to.
Yes, that's so important. And I think I would like to know what your thoughts are on this year and how it's affecting the students you're working with, and what tips you have for parents and students during this really interesting, chaotic time.
Sure. Being in a virtual world as we are right now, and fortunately, I've been in the ed tech industry for about 7 years, so I'm kind of used to it. So wasn't that much of a climb or stretch for me in that regard. But what I think I would say is that it is a tougher environment, because I think we are school in general, just because it's the kind of environment that it is, it's naturally social, whether we mean for it to be or not. And so I think factoring that out of the process in one respect or another, clearly has an impact. Now, fortunately, in the work that I do, I work with students virtually. So the students that are in USC's program that I work with, they're from all over the country and all over the world. And they actually do their program online in live classes, similar to what we're doing even right now. So there is a level of engagement that comes with that, but I think it's also what you have vested in it. So one of the tips, and amongst several tips that I would say, is the students need, as much as they can help it, need to become a little more vested in what's going on and what's happening. Surely the environment itself and the way that a teacher offers or produces the lesson or the work that they're going to be doing helps with that. But their level of investment, I think, is definitely part of it. The other aspect of it is, I don't know that students really do this a lot or think to do this, but they're study buddies. If Sheila and I, even though if we're not necessarily taking the same classes, if we are taking the same classes, even better. But if you're working on something and I'm working on something, there's an accountability for it, because, okay, Sheila, we're going to meet at 6:30 tonight, and we're going to work till 8:30 on X. Now, whether your camera's on or off, or you got a question or not, that too is another way of being able to, engage and have someone there to, kind of help support in that regard. I think that's important. I think it's important to make sure that you're managing your time, because it's very easy to, turn on, when everything turns off from your, Zoom meetings that you're in with your class, to then go, directly to Netflix and to video games. And in and of itself, those things aren't bad things. But in my mind, and part of what I talk about in the book, is that for everything that you accomplish in the way of work, you should have a time or an ability to be able to decompress. And for you, that may be Netflix, or maybe video games, or whatever else it is that you do. So there's that aspect of it as well. But to me, you can't do the play unless you do the work and you accomplish something. That just, it should be hand in glove in that regard. The other thing I'll say to you is, for our virtual world and our students, put this down. And invariably, I one of the things I do in my community college class, and I even do with my students that I coach, is I'll ask them, pull out your phone, go to your settings, and tell me what your screen time's like right now, for the week, whatever day of the week it is. And invariably, it's 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, whatever the case may be. And I say, okay, listen, the phone in and of itself is not a bad thing, but your use of it to the extent that you have right now probably isn't the best thing for you. I said, but do this: take your screen time, cut it by 50%. You now have gained, if it's 5 hours, you gain 2.5 hours back. That 2.5 hours now can be used for study. That 2.5 hours now can be done with homework. And you can still find and have 2.5 hours to yourself to use your phone however you want to, in one respect or another, but with the conditions that you have everything done, or you're done and you're productive, and it's not constantly at your, ever beckoning call when it buzzes and tweets and someone's doing else to try and, capture your attention. Simply TTYL, just, I'll talk to you later. Those are the things that you can do. I think as parents, it's really important to be mindful of what students are doing, quote unquote, in their classes. So it may mean that you're being not invasive, although teenagers would tell you that it feels like it's invasive. But I would say to be aware and engaged in what's going on and what's happening. And maybe it means that you're talking directly to the classroom, virtual teacher, to find out, how said student is doing, or how they're not doing, because some of those things don't necessarily come through. The last thing I'll say, because it is, I think, really important, and I think something that gets lost in the shuffle, is that these are tough, unprecedented times. And I think individuals' mental health is very much at play and at stake. And it may mean that they need, an additional bit of counseling, or even to start, the counseling process. And maybe it's not just the student, but it's also, potentially even the family that may need, go through, some aspect of this process, just to make sure that, everybody's on the same page, doing the same thing at the same time, and at least understanding, the limitations, but also, the opportunities that kind of exist, in that context as well. So there are a lot of things I think that can be done, a lot of things that are in place to make it happen, and just to be mindful of that. I think, kind of taking care of yourself physically as well. So your self-care is very much a part of it. I don't know if you're, a hair and nails kind of person or not, or if you like, getting massages every week, or just going and walking on the beach, or whatever the case may be. I typically tell students, work 6 days and work 6 days hard, to the hilt. Average of anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours, a day. And I tell that to doctorate level students. So I'm sure if I'm telling it to doctorate level students, I'm sure it would apply and work well for, college students, high school students, whatever the case may be. But take one day off where you're not doing anything. Decompress. Do, the family thing, if that's what you do. Hang out with your friends, obviously do it with social distancing and everything else in mind. But do you for a day, knowing that you've accomplished and did what you needed to do over the span of 6 days. Anything more than that means you're, kind of at the point of working towards perfection. And there's nothing perfect, as we clearly know. And there's a book called Brave, Not Perfect, that I've given it to my kids to read. And I actually met the author through my company a couple of years ago, and to hear her talk about it was clearly from a woman's perspective that she was offering this to her daughter, but there are, lots of life lessons, to be learned, beyond that. So those are things that I think I would offer to parents and the students about how to approach this process. And nothing's fail safe, and there's trial and error and all those other good things that go along with it. But typically, if you're managing your time well, and know what your kind of to-do list is, you can take care of what needs to be taken care of.
I agree. And that makes me want to really share something. I share this to a lot of people during the show. I don't know if you've heard of the 211. Have you heard of 211?
I haven't.
So this is really important.
Okay. I'm taking notes.
Share this with the university as well. Back in the day, we used to have phones, and we used to, rotary phones, and we would dial 411 for information.
Yep.
Well, now there is 211. And that is if you dial 211 or if you Google 211 and your state or province in Canada, you will find resources for your area. And that means you will get mental health resources, free helplines.
Oh, I have heard of this before. Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
You will get, maybe you need a food bank. Yes. Maybe you need help with rental assistance right now, or mortgage assistance right now. Help with deferment on your loans, or extra help in one way or another. There are so many different resources for veterans, extra resources for housing, getting out of an abusive situation. Yep. Our students, our coworkers, our employees. It's great to share this, because a lot of times people don't ask for help when they need it. And so if they see this, or just keep it in mind, it may be somebody that comes to you, a family, friend, loved one, and they have a situation, just to connect them with resources that can get them back on track, get them back to a solid foundation where they're out of the survival mode. And that's going to be the place where then they can go get the education, or they can be able to study and learn more, because things at home are easier, or there's actually food on the table. And so this year, people that have never needed a resource, they need resources, and that's okay. So it is okay, and more than okay, to ask for help when you need it. Exactly. And so 211, keep that in mind. It's something I try to share on every show.
Well, great, and I definitely will. And it's funny, I'd heard it before, but it didn't resonate with me until I thought maybe it was something else, but it did. Yeah. And one of the things I'll say to you in regard to that is that part of the reason why I named the business Thriving Life Coaching in general was because I was interested in helping students move beyond survival mode. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of times at colleges and universities, the no fault of their own, they offer, survival 101. And to me, that's, can you make a campfire? Can you, cover yourself in the rain if you're out, doing whatever it is that you're doing? I didn't want that same title or level of interest in that regard to be lost in the shuffle. So to me, to put a student in a situation where they're thriving, they're being proactive, they're being accessible, they're being available. One of the things that I tell students all the time is that you're on your own from the standpoint of being 18 and, being in college or even high school. It's your responsibility to kind of be doing what you need to do. Surely your parents can help guide and lead, but ultimately you're the driver of this ship. So I tell students all the time, you're on your own, but you don't have to do it alone. And so I think just being able to tap into all the resources that are out there, the 211, but even a Sheila Macs or a Reginald Ryder, in one respect or another, given our age, our life experience, and our the process of getting us to where we are right now. There's a story in that, and there's I think some inspiration that can be offered or provided that's going to be the seed that then bears the fruit. And clearly bearing fruit and the seed don't happen on the same day, but you got to start from somewhere. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, keep in perspective.
Yes, and as parents or as students, who are your peer group? Who is your peer group? And that's really important. And now, our peer group may have shifted or we lost our peer group. So just to connect with great books and learn every day, make sure you get your reading in outside of book learning and
No,
you
it's
know,
true. Really
courses,
true.
so that you have inspiration and motivation and different resources and ways of thinking to apply is really helpful. There's so many different books available that can inspire and help people, and it is important because that becomes a lot of programs. Like we have a group that people can join for free, and so there's lots of different groups people can connect to help get on track and to also just continue to support each other, hold each other accountable through
Sure.
this time, and getting to the next level as we rebuild after after going through this very interesting year.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
yes,
There's so many resources that are out there, and clearly there are a whole lot of them in college. And I know that for myself, I didn't necessarily take advantage of them to the extent that I needed to. I used them as need be, so to speak. But sometimes it was kind of after the fact, or sometimes it was, I after learning a hard lesson, doing it. And so again, the point with this coaching business and even the book is doing all you can to take a proactive approach to it, and really being what's the word? I even say deliberate in how you approach and what you approach and how to connect people to people. You talked about students in their peer group. One of the chapters, or one of the sections of one of the chapters I wrote about was about who's holding your ladder, and it's a matter of you being in a position where you should be able to kind of climb your own ladder of success, or climb your own ladder of process, without needing to look down, without needing to know that if the wind is shifting and the ladder shakes, that there's somebody down there saying, hey, I got the ladder and I'm holding it for you. So that could clearly be adults, that could be administrators, that could be your peers, and peers who are like-minded, like-valued, respect themselves, and ultimately respect you in the process, and looking out for you. And I can definitely say that this pandemic, I think, more than anything else, has really I think brought that point home to bear with not only the people that you surround yourself with from the standpoint of your kind of immediate family, your immediate situation, but all those people around you that can and will be of support to you. I can't I think overemphasize that enough. It's been really illuminating to see that process, I think, happen for myself, and even as I look at my kids and my family, and all those loved ones and friends and associates alike. There's something to that, and I guess it took a pandemic to kind of bring that to bear in one respect or another, but definitely something to keep in mind.
yes. And for me, I found my peer group when I was traveling. I took, once my children were grown, I took time off from teaching and real estate, and just worked on my investments and some online teaching. And I traveled and did leadership and traveled with the Tony Robbins group and did a whole bunch of fun stuff for 7 years straight. And I met all these people from around the world and these incredible peers. And my peer group, I mean, these people will hold you accountable and they will love you. But if but they'll also be like, step up. You
Yeah,
need to step up now. Okay.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
I was like, and you're in the right room when you're in the room where you get to play and they push you to your level to 100%.
Yes.
And then they say, and now you need to go back and you need to make sure that you're leading somewhere and that you're helping other people and you're making a difference on this planet.
Very
And
much so.
yes, and that's the difference. And that's another thing. And we all hold each other accountable to making sure that we're doing something to make a difference for humanity as best we can. And then we come back and we talk about that. And so it just feels like home when you find that, and in the universities and the college, stay connected to those people. I still am connected with a lot of the people that I went to school with, and I really enjoyed that time. I'm so glad that I took the time even though I had successful businesses, I took the time to get my degrees and learn because it was a gift to myself.
Yeah,
It was a gift.
it truly is a gift. And like, it's funny, when I was going through my master's program and I finished, and that for me was a climb, because I'd been out of school for I think I went back to school 7 years after I got my bachelor's degree, and was really kind of in the same mode that you were in some respects, that, all these people are doing very good things. I was, writing letters of recommendations for students to go to the grad school and the law school and for jobs and everything else. And, a well-known, national speaker, was at a leadership conference, and he said something very prophetic. He said, leaders do a good job of taking care of leaders, but who takes care of leaders?
Yeah.
And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I thought, I didn't really have an answer. He said, well, leaders do, people you surround yourself with help you, but ultimately you've got to help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was at that moment, literally, that I was like, okay, I need to go to graduate school. And no more than I did that, the networking that I had done, I mentioned this to someone in a conversation, and they said, I know someone who's right now looking for, graduate students. They provide an assistantship, they take care of, your out-of-state fees, waive them, and they'll give you, you go to class for 2 years and work in these different offices and gain some experience, and you're done. And bam, boom, I cold turkey stopped working and went and and did that. But again, it's back to the people you surround yourself with. Had I not been there in right place, right time, right opportunity, maybe I would have gotten there eventually, but that was the time. And so when that time comes, you got to really seize it, run with it, and make a difference. That's something that even when I started working in the admissions office at my alma mater, that was where I first got my first job. I made it a point in talking to the students and talking to the parents, but talking to them separately. But being able to say to the student, take advantage of all these resources, I clearly did, and they got me where I am, but I didn't do it to the extent that I needed to. And so I'm employing and, trusting you with this information now to be able to do something more with it than what I did. And so, people, gleaned at that. And little did I know at the time I was, operating within my gift, but, I've been doing it ever since. And so, sometimes I don't even consider it work. I just consider it just, offering a little wisdom, each one, reach one, teach one, and, kind of moving forward from there. So we got a lot in common, Sheila. I didn't realize this, that this was all going to come out in the context of our conversation, but
education is one of my passions, and I never was political. But honestly, I did, from adopting my first child on and having my own kids, I realized we had inequality in our school system. So I worked on equal access to education for all for over 20 years, got on a documentary for that. I mean, this has been one of my biggest passions. And I really believe that the cure to many of our diseases is in a child that maybe didn't get the access to the education. And so when we as a society, as a world, deny one person, one child, a fair and equal education, we're denying all of us.
True. It's funny you said, because I think in some respects it's kind of like the splash and the ripple. It's like, the splash happens, that's the kind of the impact, or the intent, in not allowing access to one person or another. But by the time that ripple reaches the shore, it's impacted or infected, depending on how you look at it, a lot of people. Just like even now, I mean, there's one of my former students that I mentored and still mentor, like, even now she's, practically like a daughter to me in some respects. I look at the trajectory of her life and what I was able to help shape and influence. And she now, she literally owns a company that's, at or near the point of where it's going to be, grossing nearly millions of dollars, with her, clearly operating within her craft. But, the impact that she's having on lives had everything to do with what I, and I'm sure other people too, poured into her.
Mm-hmm.
What would the world be like if we could, do that for every student in every situation?
Yes.
I mean, it would be amazing, because clearly we've seen the opposite of that. It'd be interesting to see what the other extreme would be, in that continuum. And it really does make a difference. Really does make a difference.
Definitely. So I'd love for you to share how parents and students can get a hold of you, maybe work with you, get your books, and
Sure.
move forward. Yes.
Well, great. Well, it's funny. I do happen to have a copy of the book. This is it. It's called "Passing the Baton: Guide and Memoir of College Success." There it is. It is on Amazon, so you can, if you want to get it quick and fast, I'm sure Prime is pumping out, a whole lot of things these days. So you can get it on Amazon if you want to, and it's available on Kindle as well as paperback. If you go to my website, reginaldryder.com, reginaldryder.com, you can purchase it there. I'm actually, it's actually on sale. It's $14.99 to start. I'm selling it now for $12, probably through the holidays, and maybe we'll see if we'll maybe extend it a little bit beyond that. So you can definitely get the book that way. I'm happy to sign it as well. And there's in the process of purchasing, you can tell me what it is that you want to for me to sign in that regard, and I'm happy to do so. I do coach students, college students, high school students, even middle school students, if warranted or necessary. And coaching, I want to offer a disclaimer with regard to coaching. Coaching can be for a student who's doing well and striving and wants to get better, and coaching can be for a student who's not doing so well and wants to get to that point to where they are doing their best work. So I think it has the ability to work in either way, in either perspective. But Thriving Life Coaching is the name of the business, and I do coach students. High school and middle school I usually do it. I have a rate for pre-college, and I have a rate for college students. Every student goes through an initial assessment just so I have a better sense and idea of kind of what's going on or what's happening. And it typically does, in one respect or another, incorporate the parents or the family, because I see this as a family process, not just an individualized student thing. We'll talk about everything from managing your time to not procrastinating to understanding the difference between studying and homework and ultimately your preparation for it. But all these things that I'm putting in place and that we talk about are really about you, the student, being able to advocate for yourself. As a young person, I didn't understand what that meant. As an adult, I clearly do. And so I want to make sure I instill those kinds of values as well. So Thriving Life Coaching is the name of the business. Passing the Baton is the name of the book, and it's all available to you on reginaldryder.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Reginald. It was a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I look forward to hearing stories from all the new students that you'll be helping. And thank you again. All right, everyone, stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. All right, if you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Macs Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today we have been talking a lot about college admissions, your road to success, going to college, getting into college. Maybe you're the first person in your family who's been into college, or it may be that everybody in your family's been in college, and maybe you have young adults in your life who are looking at a different route. And things have changed so much in education and how we do college and now and higher education. So the opportunities are now greater than ever as we're in our new decade, the 2020s, and how interesting with our universal pause and having
education be more accessible because of all the online options that were not available just at the beginning of this year. Now many colleges are offering these other opportunities to do education online, which saves a lot of money on room and board, and travel, all these additional costs. It's not the same experience in some ways, and in other ways it's a different experience, and it's something that with the universal pause, with the pandemic, it was needed. But for many people, it's a great time to take advantage of going back to college, getting another degree, or looking into getting your first degree. There's a lot more competition for getting students because of the costs and the economy the way it is right now. So it's a great time to check out different pricing. You don't have to maybe travel to go somewhere, so you can live in a different place and apply to go to a college, and your chances of getting in may be more because it's not based on so many seats. It's now online, so there's so many ways to do this. And we discussed during our interview time with Reginald how important it is to really pursue the education that is your passion. And whether you go to college or you just jump into a career that is your passion and your purpose, or you do a combination of both, there's something about that. And it's really interesting how at times in our life we are called to do things to earn an income for our family, for our loved ones, and it may not be 100% aligned with what we feel is our true calling. And a lot of us can wear many hats and have many talents, and so we're able to have a career or earn income for our well-being this year, maybe differently, and it may not be exactly in the field we thought it was going to be in. Perhaps you were on a speaking tour or a book tour was planned for this year, like for myself, and you found yourself not being able to do that with travel restrictions and COVID and this and that. So you had to make some course corrections, and that doesn't mean it's forever, but for now there are different ways and alternatives, and yet there is also still always the opportunity to give back, to volunteer, to help out, and to use your talents in ways that will help people and make a difference even as you're going through your career. And some of the college tips that like I said earlier in the interview, I actually returned to college after at 23 I opened a gift store, 5,000 square foot store. Started with a little bit of money I had saved up and a risk. I took a chance on myself, which is the entrepreneurial way, I guess, and I was very successful. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, I started buying the buildings. The first one I leased, and I had 5 gift stores. And I realized, I had children, I adopted more children, and all the other parents and people in the community had these degrees, and I didn't really have one. I had, certificates and had gone to the community college, but I really thought, oh my gosh, I need to do this. I need to do this for me. So I did return to college and get a few degrees and teachers' credentials and real estate training, everything else. And I enjoyed that so much because I was hungry for that education at that time. I was ready to learn. I had my needs met. I was established enough where I could give time and focus to my education, and yet I still had some of those stores running as I was selling them or shutting them down, and so I ended up renting out the places that I owned and selling the business. But I had to also be a parent at that time. So here I was a parent already, and decided to go back and get these degrees. And with that, I had to be really a good student. And I literally, now, so this is for whether you're a young new student or you're a parent or a more mature adult who has decided that now's the time to go back and get that degree you always wanted. It's a great time if you're able to do that. Take advantage of our universal pause and get your next degree. And I had to learn really fast how to learn. I had to relearn it. I had to actually figure it out. So when I started, the first thing I did was I got a tutor to help me with a few things because I didn't know certain like school standards, certain practices, like the writing requirements and practices of the traditional college papers. I had no idea. So I had a tutor explain what was needed and the way things need to be turned in that was different than maybe how you would do work. and so I kind of had to like go backwards a little bit. And I think I had a tutor, a lady, she was a very sweet lady, and she came out maybe 3 times and explained it, and I got it. And then later on, I learned really quickly. I did accelerated when I went to college. When I went back, I decided that I got this. So I got permission, and I was taking 18 units at a time. So you have to get special permission from the dean's office to do this. And I learned really fast that the most important thing to do was to work ahead. And I think this is true for business. Running a business, I learned this running my businesses. Working ahead is so much easier than playing the game of catch up. The game of trying to catch up, once you get behind, once you fall behind in things, it's such a difficult game to play. It's a losing game, but you can overcome that. And so I started to work ahead, and all of a sudden, when things didn't go right or something happened, I had a step parent that passed away. I had relatives that were sick at different hospitals. While I was getting my degree, I had some different things happen that required my attention, and I was still able to get mostly A's and do really well because I worked ahead. So those times when surprises happened. So I have a special gift today for you. If you are looking to reboot your career, or a young adult or an adult that is looking to go back to college or just start out in college, I have some chapters devoted just to these topics on the Bootstraps and Bra Straps book. It's also available on Audible. And in the book, you will learn more. And in the book, there are some free gifts, activities, and workshops and tips to help you. There's also a chapter on financial freedom and how to get out of debt. So if you do have college debt from going to school years ago, I have some tips on how to get out of debt quickly. So with that, I do have some homework for you. Go ahead and grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible, Amazon, and Kindle, as well as at www.sheilamac.com, and get your free Boots meditation gift for the holiday season at sheilamac.com/bootsmeditation. Thanks for listening.